Here with Matt, and he's going to give us a small interview with regards to his experience with the trans community and what he's been through so far. Matt, what's your story? Where would you start with this sort of interview?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. My name's Matt Ray. I'm the Western Regional Leader with Gays Against Groomers. I'm a 31-year-old trans man, and I am speaking out against gender ideology, medicalisation of children and sexualisation of children. The trans community has lost its way. It has become very corrupt, and children are at risk of all of these agendas being pushed. Medicalisation of children is absolutely dangerous. Their bodies haven't developed yet. The brain doesn't finish developing till age 25 for a start as well. And I think the truth needs to come out because it's being suppressed, and the media are propping up that trans kids should be going through these things and that puberty blockers are safe when they're not. You cannot simply pause puberty. It can cause brain swelling, bone loss, cancer, vision loss and other things, and we actually have a member in our organisation called Chloe Cole who has spoken out because she was put on testosterone and puberty blockers at 13 and given a double mastectomy at 15, and she has since realised she's lost organs she can't get back, she's at risk of cancer, she can't have kids anymore. And these detransitioners are being silenced as well. They're being told they don't speak for the community. Well, who can speak for the community if not someone who's lived through it?
Before we go, there's so much to cover. Before we go on, let me ask you a straight question. Is there a link to transitioning and autism?
Yes, there is. There is an overlap. Cambridge University actually did a study that showed there was an overlap.
Is it talked about in the media?
No, it's not.
Is it covered up and hidden?
Yes, it is.
There's so much to talk about. Let's just get that out of the way first of all. So let's go right back to basics. What's your story from start? Talk to me about what intersex means, how you felt growing up, how your parents were, what was pushed in schools. Give me the journey.
Okay, so first of all, when I was young, my mum was told actually through her whole pregnancy she was having a boy. And so when I came out, there was a bit of a shock there when I came out biologically female. At age 5, I actually turned around to my mum and said that I felt like I was a boy. And she did the right thing because she told me it could be a phase. And this is correct because children don't know what they are, you know. One minute I wanted to be a pirate, then I wanted to be a Superman. You know, children do not know, so affirming a child's gender is a very dangerous game to play. So there was a period growing up where I thought my mum was really, really mean, I'm going to be honest with you. But as an adult who has gone through the surgery, and I had some issues with my top surgery. You know, I actually nearly lost one of my nipples and my healing process was really bad. Can you imagine doing this to a child? So my mum did let me express myself, though. She did. She let me have my hair short. She let me be a tomboy.
You were a tomboy?
I was a tomboy.
And she enabled that. She said be a tomboy.
She enabled me to be a tomboy. And you know what? She did the best she could do. She really did at that time. And after going through all of these things, the testosterone as well, they don't give you a accurate description of what that will do. They tell you that you'll start to look more like a man, your voice will break. What they don't tell you is that you'll have mood swings. What they don't tell you is that it can become very, very stressful. I had my friends, when I first got put on testosterone, it's a very powerful hormone, extremely powerful hormone, and I was getting women, before I started testosterone, I would get more emotional, teary if I was upset. When I started testosterone, my blood would boil. I'd feel anger, and I felt like I didn't know who I was for a little while.
What age were you when you were put on testosterone? Is that right?
Yes, 26.
26. And what was the process to start? Any kind of medication or any kind of medical routines? Through which clinic, and who funded that clinic? How does it happen? If for someone who doesn't know.
So, firstly, I went to Tavistock, but before that I had an appointment with my GP and I was referred there. And
this is in the UK?
Yes, in the UK, yes.
What part of the UK?
It was in London that this appointment was, the Tavistock Centre. It's the actual sole gender clinic in the UK.
But in terms of the GP appointment, that could be any person in any home, in any of the home counties, any county, any town.
Yes, and it can be based on what that doctor's opinion is, whether they're going to refer you or not. Everyone could be different, but I was pretty much fast-tracked. I was referred straight to the GIC. I had to wait for my appointment because there was a backlog, but once I actually got to the GIC, when they say therapy, that they're not really telling the truth, because I was sat in a room and I was told to say how I felt. Now, how you feel isn't necessarily fact.
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
So when I was
and it depends on mood and other things like that.
Absolutely. And so I was there saying, you know, I felt like I was a man my whole life. And they basically went, that's great, we'll sign you off for hormones. And
how old were you at this point?
26. And so I went away, I was on the hormones, and my next appointment would be about top surgery, but that wasn't going to be for another year. There's another wait. But they don't really give you any help during this time, because they tell you to live as a man, or the gender you choose, for a year before you go on the hormones, but that's not accurate, because you haven't experienced actual testosterone. You're just basically wearing clothes. You know, you're just identifying the way you want to be without actually knowing what that means. So I felt very alone when I was going through all these changes, and it was the emotional changes I struggled with the most, because I didn't expect them. I was expecting physical changes.
There's going to be, with this process, that arguably there's going to be lots of changes. Were you handheld? Does the system allow for hand-holding for under 18s, for over 18s? Is there a system which says you are looked after, you are cared for, there's pastoral care, there's nurture, or is it GP, fast track, and is it GIDS, the service, GIDS, Tavistock, and it's kind of off you go?
The second one. It really felt like that. And when all these things happened, like I said, I felt like I didn't get the support I needed, so I had to figure things out myself. I actually used YouTube videos, and that's not the best way, because a lot of them are activists, and they also tell you things that aren't necessarily true. So I went through all of that, and then I finally had my top surgery, and again, they really left me on my own with that. I was in incredible pain. I nearly lost one of my nipples, and they kind of brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal. I haven't had a single person reach out to me since my surgery, after the first week of having the surgery, to see how it was going at all. It's
Your
just,
mental health, etc.?
we've got the paycheck and now we're moving on. It really feels like that's all you are, your money to them.
Is it a business?
Yes, it is.
Who benefits from that business? So all this money that was spent, what's the total price for what you've been through, cost-wise? Do you have any idea how much it costs for the surgery, for the for the consultations? Who earns out of this?
They get paid about, it's the big pharma, and it's the government, and they get about $1 million per surgeries I've researched. So I am now forever a permanent medical patient, and so will these children be if they put them on these things. They are creating permanent medical patients out of people. You can never stop taking hormones. Once you're on them, that's it for life.
So knowing a bit about testosterone and about bodybuilding and the Olympics and sporting and anabolic steroids, once you start messing around, arguably with nature, there's a huge price to pay. You seem like such a nice person. I've nothing but, you know, the bravery and the courage. Do you regret transitioning?
I do, in a sense where I wish I knew what I knew now, because I feel like if I didn't have the pressure of the TRAs, because you look for the people who you think you can relate to, and sadly they're all very woke, and so they tell you things that aren't true. And so I feel like if I had honesty, if Gays Against Groomers existed back then, I feel like even though I am technically intersex, I didn't know I was intersex till I went through all the stuff, so I reckon I would have just been a tomboy.
You were intersex, you were a tomboy, but if you hadn't, if there hadn't been an agenda, if things weren't being pushed, the socialization, the nurturing that we experience, it's just as powerful, potentially if not more, than nature. If things were different in a parallel universe, you and I might be having this conversation right now, and you hadn't transitioned, yes. You're living a completely different life, and you now don't get to have that life.
I agree with you completely.
What about censorship and cancel culture and trans activists, and indeed what you stand for, which we are in massive alliance with you on? What about the campaign pushing this? Drag Story UK and the sexualisation of minors. 3 years old, Labour-run councils throughout the UK allowed the individual to come in dressed in drag attire, and all the liberal mums and dads take their kids from 3 and up. How is that, in your opinion, how is that not socialisation? How is that not grooming? How is that not morally bankrupt, or is it?
It's grooming in every single way. Here's the thing. I'll put it with when they put the LGBT stuff in Disney and things as well, okay? If you put these mature themes, or these themes in general, in child things, you're getting them to think about a topic they may not necessarily have been thinking about before. You are forcing them to do this, and also it becomes a trend. I have had so many parents reach out to me. One of them said, both my kids told me they were trans. I said to them, what does that mean? And they said they didn't know. I've had so many parents doing this. Someone said their kid came home trans because their whole class is doing it. It is becoming an absolute trend, and the sad thing is the truth is being censored, and these people who are pushing this insanity are being propped on pedestals by the media, and it makes people think that that's the majority, what people think, and it's not, and it's dangerous for the gay community as well. It's very dangerous.
Well, it's hugely dangerous for the gay community, but going back to that propaganda, this is all in the name of social justice, isn't it?
Yes,
So,
it
for
is.
example, Turning Point UK, when we table, we talk necessarily about capitalism, socialism, we talk about cultural stuff. We will be called fascists because we stand against the indoctrination, sexualization, brainwashing and grooming of children, and that now makes us a fascist. What do you have to say to that?
I find it disgusting, and I get called it every day. I get called transphobic every single day. I get told as well.
My head can't even work that one out.
It makes me laugh every time. I just think, do you hear yourself?
Right.
But what's really funny about it, they comment things like, saying these things won't make the right pick you. This should not be a political issue. Since when did protecting children become a political issue? And it just goes to show how sad it is really that society has forgotten what it means to protect children.
I think the death of innocence and the fact that we're not looking after our children in the fashion that we should be is the most important point. We know that there's a political agenda, there's a media agenda, there's a farmer agenda. So from an activist perspective, we do what we can. Gays Against Groomers, you do what you can. It must be the end result must be about collaboration, spreading awareness, and standing up for what is fundamentally right and what is fundamentally wrong. Something along those lines?
I agree with you. And the sad thing is, so many people are scared to speak out because these people are so aggressive. You know, our organisation, we've had death threats. Someone threatened yesterday to burn all of our houses down, and all because we want to save children from making a choice they could later regret. We don't care what adults do with their bodies. Here's the thing: if a child thinks they're trans, just don't medicalise them because it could be a phase. But if they do really feel that way when they're an adult, they will do something about it.
So we've got J.K. Rowling leading the charge, cancelled. We've got Kathleen Stock at Sussex Uni, cancelled. And we've got death threats. We've got vigilantism. We've got militia in the US, obviously where you've got guns as well. We get called fascists for standing up for children's rights. We know for a fact that it's in schools, it's in theatres, it's all over Disney. It's this woke agenda. It's absolutely everywhere. So in terms of cancel culture, people are, to your point, people are afraid to do anything because we're saturated by it, and there's a lack of backbone, there's a lack of stoicism, and there's a lack of traditional family values almost saying over 18 do what you want. But if you're a tomboy, or for example if you're particularly effeminate as a male, let them be that, and then over 18 we will see where we're at. That is both common sense, logic, forget politics and conservatism, even though it is, forget that. This is common sense stuff, it's apolitical. So we must stand together and we must unite. People like you doing what you do, that's courage, that's bravery, you have our respect, and God bless you and thank you so much for giving us that information specifically on links to autism and medical studies coming out of Cambridge as well. Someone in your position saying, actually, let's look at what the reality is rather than the fascistic agenda to shout and scream us, threaten us, dox us for just talking common sense.
I agree with you. It needs to stop. Sadly, though, we live in society where cancel culture is praised. They encourage it. Celebrities especially encourage it. And it needs to stop because the truth has to get out. Children are at risk here. This isn't about your own personal feelings. And I've noticed a lot of the trans activists, they're thinking how they felt when they were younger. They're not growing up and realizing that actually it wasn't the best idea. Feelings do not trump facts at all, and people need to realize that. Facts also don't care about your feelings.
Last point. We've spoken a lot. And I'm thinking of the term microaggressions because I get asked that a lot when we talk about racism. So I'm thinking about the subliminal culture of all this. Pronouns. Slippery slope territory. And now I've been saying that, but you, in a position of prominence, you would know better than me. Slippery slope. You will say pronouns. It's in corporate. Look at what's happening in Scotland now. So we've got the attack on free speech, the invention of hate speech, what's happening in Scotland, also forcing people to say people's pronouns. And of course, when we table and when we confront these people, because we do get fascistic militia wannabe types, they do say that actually, as far as we're concerned, what you're doing is immoral and it's fascistic. So we do know there's a huge, again, to your point earlier on, there's no common sense or logic with regards to why they're so passionate about indoctrinating under 18-year-olds. I was at a trans rally with one of our activists this summer, just on Whitehall, and they said, when we confronted them about the evidence with regards to grooming and sexualisation, they said, and there was a mob of them, that is simply not true. And we had all the empirical evidence. They said that is simply not true. So are these people mad? Are they deluded? Are they angry? What's the problem? Because empirically, we know that grooming is happening.
I think they're brainwashed. I think in their minds, I really think they're doing the right thing, and it's because these big agencies are promoting it like it is. I don't think all these parents who are encouraging this are trying to look progressive. Some of them are probably just trying to do what's best for their kid.
Follow the crowd?
Yes, absolutely. And so I think it's sad in a way. You know, there are people who are doing it for attention. There are people who just want to look woke and they want to look progressive. But I think some of these parents who are encouraging these children to do this really just feel like they're a terrible parent if they don't, because they're being made to look like it. Some states in America have actually been taking children off of their parents for not letting them identify a certain way.
So we've got soft, weak, apathetic liberal parenting, cancel culture, the invention of hate speech, people potentially getting arrested for saying the wrong thing, the forcing of pronouns, drag stories in our libraries, giving out pride and trans flags to kids. I'm not sure what that's got to do with children. And we've also got the issue of doxing. We've got the issue from there, obviously, of the threat of violence. So I guess a couple of closing points, really. We've spoken a bit about what we can and what we can't do, but we're looking at a systemic issue that's propped up by the government and by media. We took time to explore Regent Street over the summer. Trans flags or inclusion flags, I'm not quite sure, but it was the complicated flag. Lots going on in that. That was lined down Regent Street. Within a month, the GB flag was back up. How do you feel about the fashion houses, the major fashion brands, on the pictures in Regent Street, and there's a massive scar underneath? Basically, she's had her breasts removed, and that's on a massive, great big, one of the major fashion brands, fashion houses on Regent Street, full eye of absolutely everyone at Regent Street, one of the fashion capitals. What are your thoughts when you hear stuff like that?
They are advertising these things like it's a costume you can try on. Trans doesn't mean what it used to anymore. Now, I mean, look how many people you see who are just putting a wig on and claiming their agenda now. And it's also dangerous for actual trans people too that this is happening, because the lines are getting very blurred, and it's the non-binary brigade that are causing the biggest issues here, and they're the ones who are being the loudest. And the worst thing about it is they're the ones being propped up. And it's very, very dangerous, and it needs to end. And I think more people need to have the courage to come together, because this won't stop until enough people get loud. Parents need to get down to school board meetings, city council meetings, anything they can, and get their voices heard. Because another thing that's being said is, oh, if you're not in the community, you can't speak on this. No, I'm sorry. If your child is learning in a school and they're indoctrinating your child, you get down there.
Absolutely. And one I mentioned some names earlier on. Kelly J. Keen's leading the charge in the UK. Obviously, she's threatened daily that she's trying to do what she is in the US, etc. So getting up, we're afraid to protest. We're afraid, and of course they want to trample on that a little bit as well, don't they? Of course, post-lockdown. So all that's left, and again, we haven't reinvented the wheel here, is get up, go and do something. Obviously, we endorse peaceful protesting, but it is about getting up, making a stand outside schools, placards, banners. It is fundamentally, it's what people don't want to do in this liberal, weak, apathetic age, is get up and go and fight back peacefully. Banners, placards, spread the word, form groups, form communities.